This is the lecture for Ancient and Medieval History for Thursday, the 14th of April, 2021. So, we have been talking about Islam as a light of civilization, and we talked about Muhammad expanding the empire, and then his children and grandchildren expanding the empire, until what had been a small group of people within Mecca and then the city of Medina becomes the largest land empire thus far, there are going to be bigger ones, in human history, stretching from the Atlantic coasts of Spain and Morocco to the roughly current border between Pakistan and India. That's a big one. And Islamic mercenaries will and Islamic missionaries, not mercenaries. Missionaries are people who spread the faith. Mercenaries are soldiers for hire. And Islamic missionaries will go even beyond this to proselytize to the Turks in Central Asia, to the Malays and Indonesians, and the people of Bengal in eastern India, and to the sub-Saharan Africans. So Islam is on the spread. It is spreading far and wide, both by conversion and by military conquest. These military conquests are aided by two factors that the Arabs have, which at that time make them the most effective soldiers on earth. The first, they're desert tough. They come from an environment worse than anywhere that their opponents come from. And because of that, they are used to having pain and hardship in a way that no one who they fight really is. Physically, they are able to travel farther, fight harder, endure more pain, to inflict more pain than the people they are typically fighting. Second is the promise of paradise, a particular neighborhood in paradise designed for heterosexual young men from the desert, where the shaheed, the person who dies nobly in a jihad, will be pleasured for eternity by the 72 wish virgins provided by God in a garden of earthly delights, sweetmeats, water, and so forth.
So I thought that this was interesting. I was talking to someone, I was asking her about that stuff, and she said that if you do like some bad thing, I don't remember exactly what it is, that you would be like covered in dirty snakes. But that's like not really what it is saying. But like,
well,
she
it's a
can't
variant
tell me,
of hell.
Yeah, but she can't like tell me exactly what it means because it's I can't read Arabic.
Exactly.
It means like there's no direct English.
Yeah. So the Quran, remember, the Quran has to be read in the Arabic if you're going to understand that that's the real thing. What we have in English translation is simply a translation. It's not the real Quran. And they describe vividly heaven and hell in a variety of ways. So the Chinese do this too. The Chinese have dozens and dozens of different hells. And some of them are places where you're hung upside down for an eternity and dipped in water until you suffocate, and you're pulled out and you're alive again. Christians and Jews do this too. Sheol is sort of Jewish Hades, but Sheol develops into a concept of Gehenna, which is similar to our hell, a place of sulfurous lava lakes and fire, and demons stabbing you in the posterior with pitchforks for eternity. And what these are, how would you describe being separated from the truth, from God, from love, from anything worthwhile? Because that's really what hell is. Believers in religion who aren't fundamentalists, I'm tempted to say, or psychopaths, believers in religion don't tend to take pleasure in the damnation of others. Believers in religions of all kinds tend to hope that people will pursue whatever their belief says is salvation. Now, what Christians, mainline Christians, tend to believe is that a person can refuse the offer that God gives. They can refuse to live a life that's decent or loving or generous or kind. They can refuse to take any hope from the possibility of a loving God. They can refuse the offer that Jesus makes. We have free will, we can do that. And the result of that, yeah, it's been described as things. Imagine being crawled over for eternity by dirty snakes or by worms that eat your flesh and burrow in. It was just horrible, nasty stuff. But what that really is intended to approximate is, what if when you die, you encountered the truth? Not your truth, not my truth, not subjective truth, not, you have your beliefs, I have mine. No, you encounter the truth of the universe. And nobody's going to live up to that because nobody's God. But if you've lived in such a way that you can't accept the truth, that you can't see the truth, or that you will dispute the universe, not like a human being who's alive, well, I'm not convinced. But as a person who's dead and who sees the reality of things and who says, no, your reality is bogus, I'm not going to listen. Well, at that point, you have separated yourself from the truth. You have separated yourself from God or the gods or whatever. And assuming that you live on, what is your existence going to be like? You're living in a lie. And deep down, it's not like, well, maybe no, you know it's a lie. So you are living in the absence of truth, in the absence of good, in the absence of love. You are living there purely because you're stubborn. That's hell. And how might you describe that to somebody who isn't necessarily thoughtful enough to appreciate how horrible what I just said was? Well, you describe it like lemur, worm, demon things burrowing through one another and being dipped in sulfur and being ripped apart by devils and being told you have to count all the grains of sand on a beach. And then just as you're getting close to the end, the wind blows. I mean, these sorts of things are ways of depicting living in the absence of good or truth or reality or honesty or any of that. But yeah, and it is interesting to talk to people who have different beliefs. Certainly there are Christians, maybe in this room, who think that my take on Christianity, Judaism, and Islam is nonsense. Fine. I do my best. We all do. But the promise of going to a place like that, right here, right now, it is enough to make a significant portion of any Islamic battle force willing to die for victory today. And that gives them a remarkable power on the battlefield, because not all their troops are trying to fight and win and live. Some of their troops are intending to die right here, right now, and they're going to occupy the enemy and give the other troops a chance to get an advantage over them. So that's a powerful thing. And the Japanese, for an entirely different cultural reason, have a similar willingness to end their own lives for the sake of honor or the emperor or whatever. And that made them, at the end of World War II, much more difficult to fight. These people who think that dropping the atom bombs was a discretionary choice and we didn't have to do it, have not looked into the Japan of the summer of 1945 and the mindset of its leaders and the mindset of many of its people. It is a different world because of culture. What I'm trying to illustrate is the power of culture. Muslims and Christians and Jews all worship the same God, but we really inhabit different universes because of the way that we view those various things. So, the empire is made, and we talked a bit about Sharia law, which is Islamic Quranic law. In this class, not my other two, I talked about the Hashishan. I'll have to tell them about that today, which are the assassins of the Emperor of the Mountain of Malik. We talk funny today, but not humorously funny, just stupid funny. The Hashishan are the assassins of the Mountain Alamut, no emperor. Hassan is Sabah, the grandfather, the old man of the mountain, founds a cult of murder where people pay him, and he has all sorts of folk working for him, learning how to move, how to infiltrate, how to lie, and how to kill. And these people all are training to be shaheed, to be martyrs in a holy war. So they are hired. Sabah takes a contract, gives it to one of his assassins, and the assassin is going to worm his way into his target's life, and then when it's least expected, kill him. But to ensure the fidelity of the assassin is given a taste of heaven. And that taste of heaven is a night of unbridled pleasure and sensual bliss with a combination of sex and hashish, which is a narcotic drug. It's sort of a paste. And other things, sound, sights, touch, silk. And the Hashishan, the assassin, is he wants more. And God will give him more once he kills his target, and then probably is going to die killing his target. It's very hard to fight someone who's willing to die to kill you. It's very hard to protect a world leader like a president or a king or a dictator against somebody or a group of somebodies who are willing not just to commit murder, but to commit murder and die in the process. Just like it's harder to shoot down a Japanese suicide bomber or a kamikaze, because instead of maneuvering their plane to shoot machine guns or cannons or drop bombs or torpedoes, they're just aiming straight in to hit you. And even if you blow the plane up, our Navy crews found to their horror, the debris, if you don't explode the plane far enough away, the debris is still going to hit your carrier and cause massive damage. So, it's like an asteroid coming towards the Earth. There comes a point beyond which you can't deflect it away. And if you blow it up, well, instead of getting hit by a giant rock, you're getting hit by 10,000 medium-sized rocks. It's still not a great day for the Earth. So, okay, let's talk about some terms. First of all, one of the duties of Muslims is to pray 5 times a day facing Mecca. And in doing so, they keep faithful to God. So they do it in a mosque, or they do it at work, or they do it at school. It's not intended for public display. It's a private thing, but Muslims, if they can, go to a mosque and pray together. So they pray 5 times a day facing Mecca. And that prayer, by the way, has a special name, but I don't remember what it is. So it's certainly not something to test you on. Another duty of Islamic believers is called the Hajj. And this is true for men. I don't know if today they allow women. I suspect they don't, but who knows. The Hajj, H-A-J-J. Every Muslim man, once in his life at least, is expected to make the journey from wherever they live to the city of Mecca in Arabia. And in Mecca spend what is now going on, the holy month of Ramadan. And there, as part of their experience, they will circle the Kaaba. I think it's 3 times counterclockwise, but I'm not sure. And they will all be Muslims together. Now, I remember the heavyweight champion boxer of the world from the late 60s and throughout the 1970s. His name is Muhammad Ali. Now, Muhammad Ali was a black guy from the American South. His birth name was Cassius Clay. Cassius, a Roman name. Clay was his last name. And Cassius Clay fought his way up and became the best boxer in the United States, the heavyweight champion of the world is what it's called. And then he was drafted into the Army during the time of the Vietnam War. Understand, I don't agree with Cassius Clay about much, but I admire him. Now, you may see why. Now, had Cassius Clay followed his civic duty and accepted induction into the Army, there's no way that the heavyweight champion of the world is going to go and be spent as a combat infantryman in the jungles of Vietnam. No, he's going to be on some general staff, and what he's going to do is he's going to go around the country and the world, and he's going to do exhibition boxing matches. And he's going to do that in order to encourage people to join the Army voluntarily and to improve the morale of the troops in the battle zone. The closest he would have come to combat is, doing a demonstration boxing match somewhere in a relatively safe area in South Vietnam. And everyone knew that. But he refused to go. They said, if you refuse to go, you're breaking the law. A, you're going to go to jail. B, you're going to get stripped of your title. He says, fine. That's fair. I refuse to go. And so he loses his title by his own choice, and he goes to jail for a few years. Now, there's something about protest that a lot of people don't understand. A lot of people think, well, we have a right to protest. Well, you do have a right to political speech that is peaceful. But you also don't have a right to break the law in the process. So sometimes the most patriotic thing a person can do if they dissent from something, if they want to protest something, is go to jail for it. I laugh at some of the young people in Antifa who are angry that they get arrested when they break the law. And it's like, you broke the law. Of course you're getting arrested. You don't have a right. You don't have a right to protest. You don't have a right to burn down a courthouse or beat up people who don't agree with you or stop traffic on a highway. That's dangerous stuff. What if somebody's on their way to the hospital? You're stopping them from getting treatment. So a person of conscience will stand up for their beliefs and will suffer for them. If you go to jail because of your beliefs, that is an honorable thing. But the country is not going to say, well, we suspend the law so you don't have to worry about going to jail. No, you're going to jail. And you wear that as a badge of honor. Now, I respect Cassius Clay, who I think in prison, maybe just before, converts to Islam, to the Nation of Islam, actually, which is a black Muslim group. And he changes his name to Muhammad Ali. I respect, and that's how I'm going to call it from now on, I respect Muhammad Ali, not because I agree with him about Vietnam, I really don't. I think that Vietnam was a good war badly fought. But he didn't just refuse to go to the draft and then try to hide or weasel out of it or sneak across the border to Canada, like a lot of cowards did. He was not willing to become an army medic, which is an option if you don't believe in fighting or killing. If you're a pacifist and you get drafted into the military, you can claim the status of conscientious objector, which means you're not willing to kill. And usually what happens to conscientious objectors, unless they're utterly stupid, is they become army medics. Not all army medics are conscientious objectors. Today, almost none are because it's a volunteer military. But as an army medic, you are wearing the uniform. You have obeyed the call of your country. You are putting yourself at risk like other men of your generation. You are doing it. You are doing your duty. But instead of carrying a rifle and aiming and shooting at human beings to kill them, you are healing. And a good medic will heal men on, soldiers on both sides. So, Cassius Clay / Muhammad Ali did not choose to accept being drafted. did not therefore choose the route of conscientious objector, which was open to him. He chose to give up his title, which is his career, and go to jail for a few years, which he does. I respect him because he has the courage of his convictions. He's willing to do what he thinks is right. I don't respect the people who went to Canada. I don't respect them at all. And one of the nastier things that happened when I was young was when Liberal Democrat Jimmy Carter was elected president, he pardoned all of them and allowed these people to come back to this country and live like normal citizens. I still have a problem with that. Now, who knows? You may be related to one who went to Canada and came back. You may think they're wonderful heroes because they wouldn't fight. Well, I would suggest they had options for not fighting that included serving as a conscientious objector or going to jail. And instead of doing either, they fled the country to a foreign land when we were at war and needed them. Many liberal teachers call these people conflict avoiders. I call them cowards. Probably I'm not somebody who's walked in their personal shoes, so I probably, take my opinion or leave it. Develop your own thoughts about this. But remember the next time somebody talks to you about how wonderful conflict avoiders are, what they actually did. In any event, after prison, Muhammad Ali comes out and he starts fighting. And he becomes champion again, and then he loses it, and again, and then he loses it, and again. And he is the most dynamic fighter of that era. He's a smart guy until he gets punch drunk for the rest of his life and his mind is damaged by all the head blows he's taken. But he was a very intelligent guy, a very quick-witted guy, quick on his feet, and quick with a humorous phrase. He talked about his Hajj. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel like a black man. Because here in Mecca, marching around the Kaaba, there were Muslim men of all colors. There were Muslim men who looked like Vikings. There were Muslim men that looked like the Vietnamese enemy. There were Muslim men that looked like him. There were Muslim men that looked like all peoples come together in prayer to God. And it was one of the most thrilling moments in a very accomplished man's life. So that's the Hajj. You have to save for it. Maybe there are charitable organizations that will help you. But every Muslim man at one point or another in his life is expected to go on Hajj to Mecca and take part in that. And that's a pretty amazing thing. It also means that unlike the Christians of that era, the Muslims at least make one grand journey in their life because most Muslims don't live anywhere near Mecca. And this is going to encourage them to learn how to navigate better. It's also going to encourage them to learn astronomy enough to figure out where Mecca is, wherever they are, using the stars. Jihad. Traditionally, what jihad means is Islamic holy war. When you hear the term jihad, usually it means a bunch of people fighting battles for God. And that's true. Fighting battles for God is part of jihad. But there's another part of jihad that's important too. Let's say you're obnoxious, and you know it. You have a nasty sense of humor, and you hurt people with it. Because you're sarcastic, you cut them up, you have a razor wit, and that means you slice people up and make them bleed. Or let's say you have a bad temper, and somebody crosses you and suddenly you're all over them, verbally or physically. Not that anyone in here has that. Or let's say you eat too much, or drink you're not supposed to drink. Let's say you eat too much, or don't exercise enough, or whatever. Jihad is about struggling for God, struggling in service to God. Jihad can mean the self-struggle of learning to go on a diet, or learning to bridle your tongue so that you don't hurt people with it, or learning to control your temper, that's jihad. But going into battle and dying for Allah, that's also jihad. Fighting against the infidel and converting by the sword, that's also jihad. So jihad can mean many things, but it is something I expect you to know. Now, the term Islam itself, there are some modern people who don't want to offend the Muslims who say that Islam means peace. Well, in a roundabout way, it kind of does. What it literally means is submission to God. Christian scriptures talk about each of us being a child of God. The Quran uses that image, child of God, too, but it also uses the term slave of God, which also appears in the Christian scriptures. It is my honor to be a slave of Christ, Paul says. And this image that all believers are owned by God, are slaves of God, submit to God, obey God, that leads to peace of mind. Islam is the peace of mind that you get from obeying the master of the universe. It is the peace of mind that you get from submitting your ego to God, from submitting your free will to God. That's the peace of Islam. If you are rebellious to God, there's no peace. You're a rebel against God. That makes you a servant of Shaitan, which is the Islamic devil, Satan. We talked about honor killings yesterday. If a professed Muslim converts to another religion, other Muslims can step in and bring that person to their death in order to prevent them from taking their soul out of purity and damaging their family's reputation and so on and so forth. Halal. H-A-L-L-A-L. Halal is the Islamic dietary code. Halal is the Islamic version of kosher. H-A-L-L-A-L. Halal. In places, and I saw this in Portland, Maine, that have large Muslim minorities, they will have halal delis. It's like a Jewish deli that's kosher. It's a halal supermarket. Now, first of all, you don't eat pig of any kind. Pig is the devil's animal. Now, the Jews share this. You're not allowed to eat pork. Now, there are some reasons for this. The Jews tell the story of a herd of swine going through the Holy of Holies and defiling it. So that is why Jews say, don't eat of the pig. The Muslims certainly have their stories in the Quran. I honestly don't remember. But there's a practical reason, too. Most of these holy regulations have a practical side to them. Like the Jews, the early Muslims are desert people. And the thing about pork is if you don't properly and fully cook it, you can get trichinosis and die. That's why when you roast a pig, you do it for over 24 hours in a pig roaster. Because you want to make sure that every single morsel of flesh on that pig is fully cooked. In the desert, you can get away with partially cooking lamb and it's not going to kill you. But if you pull that stuff with pork, you're going to die. Jews are also not allowed to eat shellfish as part of being kosher. So, Muslims who keep halal cannot eat pig. They cannot drink alcohol. More particularly, they cannot drink the fermentation of the grape or of the grain. So no wine, no beer, no spirits. There's a wonderful scene in the movie The 13th Warrior where a Muslim warrior who's fighting among the Vikings learns about mead, which is booze made from honey. And since there's no specific prohibition against drinking honey, yeah, he's in the middle of a hopeless battle. He drinks some of the meat. But in general terms, you're not supposed to drink spirituous beverages. Now, the murderers of September 11th, 2001, they got drunk and went to strip clubs in the days leading up to the attack because they thought that they deserved it. Since they were going to go to heaven, they might as well experience these things that they have been forbidden because they're going to be shaheed. That is not the way you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to wait until you die, and then you get the happiness. So keeping halal is a way of making sure that the food is physically pure, because like kosher, halal is a good way to keep your food from killing you. But it's also a way of making sure that you don't become gluttonous, that you don't become a drunkard, that you don't live badly. So that's halal. Allah. When Moses, at the burning bush, asks God how he should be called, God answers, I am who am, or I am that am. Now Moses, when he's writing this down in the book of Exodus later, explains this with the word Yahweh. But since Hebrew of Moses' time did not have vowels, it was just the consonants with a bunch of implicit vowels. So we really don't fully understand what Yahweh actually would have sounded like to Moses. We think it's Yahweh, but we're not sure. So modern monotheists believe that Yahweh is the sound that God made in Moses' head when he says, I am who am. Medieval Christians translate Yahweh into Jehovah. So Jehovah's Witnesses consider themselves to be the witnesses to the one true God, Jehovah. Muhammad translates the same sound as Allah. Allah. Very, very vowely, very, very breathy Allah. Like you are breathing out your soul almost when you say it. Blessed be Allah, the compassionate, the merciful. Allah is God. There is no God but God, and Muhammad is his prophet. That is one. You know how Judaism can be compressed into the Lord is God, the Lord is one, and Christianity can be compressed into, and God so loved the world, he sent his only begotten Son to die for our sins that we might have life eternal. Well, in Islam, the reduction of the religion to a single statement is, there is no God but God. And Muhammad is his prophet. And all Muslims learn to say that in Arabic. That's one of the most basic lessons. So, this gives you a sense of the society. Now, the word caliph, C-A-L-I-P-H, the word caliph means the defender and protector of Islam. The word caliph means the defender and protector of Islam. In other words, the chief worldly ruler within the Islamic world. The one who has the best armies, the most powerful fleets, the most powerful economy. So the caliph is considered to be the ruler of Islam. The caliph has certain religious and political and military duties, just like Muhammad did. Remember, the example of Muhammad. So Muhammad is not a former carpenter wandering around teaching, healing, and dying for people. Nor is he's more like Moses, in the sense that Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt, but Moses had Joshua. And Joshua tended to handle the military and the political matters, and Moses did some politics and he did the religion. And since the religion defined the Israelites, Moses was very powerful. But Muhammad was everything wrapped up into one. He was the prophet who received God's revelation through the archangel Gabriel. Fine. He is the author, or actually the scribe of the Quran. Sure. But Muhammad is also the leader of the jihad in Arabia. He is a judge. People go to him with injustices and they ask him to adjudicate, to weigh the scales. So Muhammad is general, Muhammad is judge, Muhammad is king, Muhammad is prophet, all rolled up into one. He is the leader of Islam. He is the prophet. He serves the role of caliph. Now, we come to a real division. Because when Muhammad dies, who's going to become the next caliph? There's a controversy. Remember, one of Muhammad's last wives, if not his last wife, is Aisha, the 6-year-old girl whom he consummates the marriage with at age 9. Aisha's father is Abu Bakr, a powerful chieftain and general, and Muhammad's father-in-law, because Aisha is Abu Bakr's daughter. And he is a claimant to be the next caliph. And then there's Ali. Fatima was the daughter of Muhammad and his first wife, Khadijah. Fatima's fully adult at this point, and Fatima marries Ali. So Ali is the Prophet's son-in-law. So now we have a battle, a struggle within Islam. Who is the true successor to the Prophet? Who will be Caliph? Will it be Muhammad's father-in-law, Abu Bakr? The relationship is through his child wife Aisha. Or is it Ali, Muhammad's son-in-law, the relationship through Fatima, the daughter of Muhammad and Khadijah? And they do not resolve this peacefully. One of the critical battles in Islamic history is the Battle of Karbala, which I guess I don't have up here, so I will write it for you. The Battle of Karbala. And the Battle of Karbala happens on October the 10th. 680. Karbala, 10 October 680. Now, at the Battle of Karbala, Abu Bakr's forces win. And this becomes the branch of Islam called Sunni. Sunni Muslims are the largest group of Muslims on earth. They include Arabs in Arabia and around it, Egyptians, all the way across North Africa. Sunni Muslims are the majority in Pakistan, in Malaya, or Malaysia, as it is today, in Indonesia, and in the southern Philippines. The majoritarian Muslims are called Sunni. However, the followers of Ali do not disappear. They are called Shiites. 2 eyes and an E on the end. Shiites are followers of the slain Ali, who's killed. And Shiites dominate southern Iraq and Iran. And they are minorities in Sunni countries. The Sunnis and the Shiites do not particularly get along. So one of the things that ISIS, the Islamic State in Syria, used to do is not only would they seek out Christians and kill them, they do that a bit, but their real passion was seeking out Shiite Muslims who worshipped Allah wrong and kill them unless they converted to Sunni. Iran is a Shiite theocracy. Saudi Arabia is a Sunni theocracy. One of the reasons why the United States is considered to be a useful force in the Middle East, despite the fact that we support Israel, which most Arabs don't like, to say the least, is because we stand against the Iranians. The Iranians are fanatical, as seen by the Sunnis. The Iranians would overthrow the Saudi monarchy, the monarchies in Oman and Qatar in the United Arab Emirates. The Shiites of Iran are involved in the Yemeni civil war, and they're involved in most crises around the world. On the other hand, it was Sunni Muslims that took part in the 9/11 attack. So we have a split that is at times as intense as the religious wars between Catholics and Protestants 500 years ago in Europe, or as the struggle between Catholics and Protestants in Northern Ireland just 20 or 30 years ago. Sometimes Sunni and Shiites get along. Sometimes they don't. But it goes back to what seems to be a strange dispute between religious people. Who will be the caliph? Well, Abu Bakr becomes the caliph. And the Sunnis win the battle of Karbala, and they become the dominant force. Okay, let's talk about how Islamic Arab civilization is at its zenith. Now, the word zenith means high point. Tip-top, tip-top, tip-top high point. That is the zenith. The highest point on a cathedral or on a minaret, that's the zenith. The top, tippity-top, top. So, 1,000 years ago, if you were an alien looking to become a tourist and travel around the earth, if you wanted a comfortable time, you would not go to Europe. Our ancestors in Europe, most of them were peasants who lived in thatched huts made of wattle and daub wicker, where they brought their animals in the wintertime to share the space and the warmth, where nobody bathes except a couple times a year when they end up falling into the river. Our ancestors were filthy illiterates. Don't go to Christendom. Well, China's usually a pretty good bet. They've got great food. They've got baths. But 1,000 years ago, China was divided into two empires, the northern and southern Song. And they don't get along. And barbarians are threatening them. So China is a society that's not at its best 1,000 years ago. India, the same. India is this perpetually roiling mass of different religions, cultures, and languages that are fighting one another in the name of peace. So, the best place on earth in terms of wealth, law and order, technical achievement, literacy, was the Islamic Middle East. 1,000 years ago, we were the third world. They were the first world. They had cities that had streetlights. They were torches, but they were streetlights. They had cities that had a sewer system. It wasn't as big as the Romans, but every main street had a channel down the center of the road where water flowed. And that's where you put your household waste, so that the water takes it away. Islamic cities have hot bathhouses. So you can actually get properly clean and experience a hot bath. the Europeans had forgotten how to make Roman thermae. So they didn't know how to get a hot bath. You boil some water and you give yourself a sponge bath. That's about the best that the cleanest of the Europeans were able to do. But in Arab cities, you can get a full immersion bath in something steaming hot. And trust me, if you live in a world where baths are rare and you have the option to get one, they matter. The Islamic world has libraries and universities where the ancient knowledge of Plato and Socrates and the geometry and all of these other sciences come together. So they retain their knowledge and they build on it. 1,000 years ago, the most advanced sciences were done by Arabs. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. Arab cities were relatively clean. They had a night watch. They were relatively orderly. They weren't just crime zones like the cities of Europe or India or China. I guess we will talk a little bit about what these places, what the knowledge is that they had were. Mathematics. The Greeks have geometry. I was going to say it in sort of a Greeky way, but I can't because I have trouble speaking this morning. Geometria. Greeks have geometry. So the Arabs take this advanced math and they combine it with something they learned from the Hindus in India. You see, the Hindus and the Buddhists after them have a concept of nothingness, of a null set. They have a concept for it. Buddhists are supposed to embrace nothingness and emptiness. They're supposed to give up themselves and meditate until they rise above self. And embrace oblivion, nothingness. The Hindus have a concept of nothingness too. So the Arabs turned this Hindu concept of nothingness into zero. Romans don't have a number for zero. The Greeks don't have a number for zero. Why on earth would you have a number for nothing? Didn't make any sense. It's like somebody saying the world is round to somebody who's never thought about it before. Doesn't make any common sense. Why have zero? But there is a reason why when we count, we use Hindu-Arabic numbers. We don't use Roman numbers. We use Hindu-Arabic numbers. Because the Hindu concept of nothing and some of their symbology is turned by the Arabs into a functional system of numbers and of math. And with the concept of zero, which is necessary for all advanced math without exception, the Arabs develop algebra. Algebra is algebra, Arabic math. So if you're learning geometry, you're learning Greek math. If you're learning algebra or something after like trigonometry or calculus, you're learning math based on Arabic math. So mathematics, algebra, Hindu-Arabic numerals, numbers, and zero. And this is just to start. We'll leave things there and continue tomorrow. Any questions? Yeah.
I read somewhere that a lot of the reason why we use like the reason why our numbers look so similar to the old Arabic numbers is because they wrote their numbers with the amount of angles in each number and like
Interesting.
Like that. So it'd be like one angle. There'd be two and
Oh, that's really cool. I never thought of it quite that way. That's great. That's a great mnemonic too. It teaches you. Oh, that's sweet. Here, can I borrow that? So what Emma brought up is that Arabic numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you look at the shapes, you can say 1 has a single line, 2 has 2 shapes, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5, 6, 6, and so on. And so that is a memory device, a mnemonic, to help people do that. That's great. And again, to me, the thing is zero. Zero is the big deal, but that's cool. Also, Hindu-Arabic numbers are so much easier to use. You try working with Roman numerals in math. A, you don't have a zero. B, it's just annoying. So, Hindu-Arabic numbers. Anyway, we'll continue next time. Many thanks. Bye-bye.